Okay, so let's look at mixed numbers on a number line. So the first thing you always want to pay attention to is this bottom number, because that's going to tell you how many sections each one is cut up into. So we know our answer is going to be greater than 2, because if we have one whole and one whole, it's going to be 2 something. So one thing you want to do is, like, if you were to represent from 0 to 1, this has to be cut up into 6 pieces. So I always do thirds first, and then I cut it again to show sixths. Then I'm going to cut the next one. Cut that into thirds, and then cut that into halves. And then obviously this will be 3, and then that's in thirds, and then that's right there. So your first step is to show 1 and 4/6. And so you want to start here and jump to 1 and 4/6. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we know that's 5, 6. So we need to go over here. So you would show from here to here, that jump. And then it's 1 and 2/6. Now this is where people get confused. The first part is easy. Then they're like, well, wait, I don't know how to jump one whole. I know how to start from 0 and go from there. So what I always say is, well, we know the whole thing is cut into sixths. So why don't you add the smaller piece first? So 2, 6, 1, 6, 2, 6. So you can do that. So just kind of imagine you're over there. Then add one whole. Well, from 2 to 3 is one whole, so then my second jump would be here, and my answer would be 3. And then what's nice is you can always check. So in adding mixed numbers, in my other video I showed you how to do that. You always add the whole numbers first. So 1 plus 1 is 2, and then 4, 6 plus 2, 6 is 6, 6. Well, 6, 6 is equivalent to one whole, so then my answer will be 3. So here's a visual of 1 and 4/6 plus 1 and 2/6 down here using manipulatives and objects. So I kind of explained on the number line that it's hard to jump one whole from 1 and 4/6. So you can always add those first, then do that. And then you get 1, 2, 3. Okay, so let's look at another example. 1 and 7/8 plus 2 and 3/8. So just by kind of looking at it, I know that it's going to be at least 3. So I might want to cut this in like up till 5 maybe. So if I call that 5, maybe like 1, or 1, 2, 3, 4. So these are whole numbers. These are not fractions. Within each whole number there will be fractions. And as always, you look at the bottom number, and that's how many pieces you know each section will be in. So what I always do is I cut it again, and then cut each one again. So it's fourths, now it's eighths, it's half, it's fourths, eighths, half, fourths, eighths, half, fourths, eighths. Okay, so step 1 is 1 and 7/8. So one whole, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is my first jump. The next jump is 2 and 3/8. Now this one's a little bit tricky, because if I jump 3/8, I'm like not on a whole number, so that can be difficult to jump 2 whole anyways. So I'm going to jump 2 whole first. So I know that I am one spot before the next whole number. So when I skip over, I have to be at the next spot that's one before that. Or you can just jump 8/8. We know 8/8 equals one whole. So if I had 2 whole, I'd have to have 16/8. So I could just count 16/8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That would be the first one. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. That would be the second one. Okay, so we're right here. Then add your 3/8. 1, 2, 3. So I'm right over here. So then my answer is 1 whole, 2 whole, 3 whole, 4 whole, and 2/8. Here is a visual using objects. It was 1 7/8 plus 2 3/8. So to start off, sorry, I need one more of these. Okay, so we did 1 7/8, and then we decided to add 2 whole first. So you could do that. So I have 3 7/8 right now. Then I add that over there, and then I have 2 left over. 1, 2, 3, 4 whole and 2/8, which is what I got in the last video. Okay, so I want to go over another example, but this time I'm going to show you 2 number lines, and we're going to talk about which one accurately represents this math problem. We're so used to drawing it, but we also be able to recognize which one is the correct one, because the main thing we have to pay attention to is that is the number line cut into the correct number of pieces. Everything seems okay because, you know, you're looking at 3/5 and, you know, oh, it's the third one, but you got to make sure it's five pieces out of 5 pieces. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add these. So that's 2 whole, and then 3/5 plus 4/5 is 7/5. Well, 7/5 is more than 1 whole, so I'm going to do 7/5 minus 5/5, and that's 2/5. Okay, this extra 5/5 is 1 whole, which will get added to this, so my answer should be 2 5/5. I'm also going to show that using objects. Those of you that learn better with pictures, I'm going to show 1 3/5 down here, plus 1 4/5. I'm going to set that up. Okay, so step 1 is add the whole numbers. Step 2 is add the pieces. And notice we have too much, so we take away my extra to make 1 whole. And I have 1, 2, 3 whole and 2/5. So we know the answer is correct. Now we got to find the number line that best represents it. So looking at this, I got to make sure everything's cut into fifths. And I got to make sure my final answer at the end of that number line is at 3 2/5. So looking at this, from between 0 and 1, let's make sure it's in fifths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this one could be a possible answer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, this one is most likely not going to be the correct answer. But let's just look at both of them, because I also want you to see some other mistakes that people make when they select an answer for a number line. So my first number should represent 1 3/5. So here's 1 whole from here to here, and then 3/5. 1, 2, 3. So this is 1 3/5 because this is 4, 5. So let's look at this one. Here's 1 whole right here, and then 3/5. 1, 2, 3. So a lot of people would say, oh, that's 1 3/5 also. But if you don't count this in the beginning to make sure it's in fifths, how are you going to know? You know, from a distance, both look like it's on 1 3/5. You have to keep counting and make sure that it's out of 5 pieces, and this one clearly is out of 6 pieces. Okay, so let's keep going. Next, you're going to add 1 4/5. So this one, if you were to jump 4/5, 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5. So I'm 2 pieces past this one. So when I jump 1 whole, I should be 2 pieces after the next whole. So if I look, that works correctly. So this one does accurately show 3 2/5. So let's look at this one now. So 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5. So I'm over here 1 piece after 2. So if I jump 1 whole, I should be 1 piece after 2. So that is correct, okay, as far as we're thinking this is in fifths. As far as that is correct, but this whole thing is cut into 6, so they're actually showing you 3 and 1/6. They're showing you 1 and 3/6 plus 1, 2, 3. They are showing 2 and 4, 1 and 3/6 plus 1 and 4/6. That's how you get 3 and 1/6. So this looks like it's these numbers, but when you look at your final answer and do the addition, you get 3 and 2/5, and they have 3 and 1/6. So be sure. Okay, so now let's look at subtraction on a number line. So let's say so-and-so wants to try to run 3 miles a day. She ran 1 and 1/3 this morning. How much does she have left to run? So your first step would be to obviously show 1 whole and 2 whole. And then notice that it's going to be in thirds. Okay. What I do sometimes is I extend my whole numbers, the lines, so it's obvious. And then what you want to do is you can go backwards on the number line to show what's left on this side. So if I'm going back 1 whole and 1/3, that would be right here. Make sure it's in thirds, 1, 2, 3. So 1 whole and 1/3 ends up right here. So the question is how much is left? And so this would be considered your leftover. The whole thing, your piece and your other piece must equal 3. Here is a visual for you to see subtraction using letters and unknown quantities with representations. So 3 is my total. I'm taking away 1 and 1/3. What is left over? Well, whatever's left over plus this, it needs to equal 3. So I have this, so then the other piece will be my answer. So this is 1 whole and then 2/3. And then to check it, I always take the other piece. 1 whole plus 1 whole is 2. And then 2/3 plus 1/3 is 3/3. 3/3 equals 1 whole. 2 plus that 1 whole equals 3. I hope this is making sense. And so then my answer is correct as far as saying 1 and 2/3 is the answer. Let me show you using visuals. It's actually easier with objects than number lines sometimes. So imagine 3 whole miles, okay? And she ran 1 and 1/3 already. Now I can't just take out 1/3 from here. Like I can take out 1 whole, but I can't take out thirds from here. So I'm going to replace that into thirds, okay? So let's just do that. And now I can take away 1/3, and now I have 1 and 2/3 left over. And if I were to add it back on, if I were to add 1 and 1/3 plus 2 and 1/3 back together, I should get 3 as my answer. So I'm going to show you something a little bit similar in the last video clip, but just maybe an easier way to do this, because it is hard to visually see when you're jumping 1 whole, but you're like randomly in the middle. What you want to do first is find 4 and 3/4 on your number line, okay? So 1 whole, 2 whole, 3 whole, 4 whole. Here is 3/4. Now, I already labeled these. So like if you get a question that says which of the following number lines best represents 4 and 3/4 minus 2 and 1/4, these might be blank. And so then you have to figure out, well, if they told me that's 3 and I know it's cut into fourths, then I need to go back 1, 2, 3, 4, and I know that's 2, and make sure it all balances out. So 4 and 3/4 minus 2 and 1/4. So I'm going to convert the 2 and 1/4 into an improper fraction, or a fraction greater than 1. So we know in 1 whole, all the pieces are filled. So 1 whole is 4/4. So if there's 2 whole, that's 8/4. I'm going to add this piece here. That's 9/4. Okay? So I know 2 1/4 is equivalent to 9/4. So that's how much I'm going to jump back. And I'm also going to make sure these are cut into fourths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to go back 9/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is where I should be. So this is where you show 4 3/4 minus 2 1/4. Sometimes you might see a giant X or crossing a, like it's shaded in or something like that. So my answer is 2 2/4. Now to make sure that's correct, always solve it up here. 4 minus 2 is, whoa, what was that? 4 minus 2 is 2. 3/4 minus 1/4 is 2/4. And then to check it, take this piece plus this piece and make sure it equals 4 3/4. So I had 2 1/4 plus 2 2/4. Add the whole numbers first, add the small pieces next, 4 3/4. So that's how I know I did it correctly.